Judges chapter 11, Jephthah, the ninth judge. Now Jephthah was the Gilead, who was a brave warrior, but he was the son of a prostitute. Gilead was the father of Jephthah. Gilead's wife bore him sons, and when his wife's sons grew up, they drove Jephthah out and said to him, "You shall not have an inheritance in our father's house, because you are the son of another woman." Then Jephthah fled from his brothers and lived in the land of Tob, and worthless and unprincipled men gathered around Jephthah and went out on raids with him. Now it happened after a while that the Ammonites fought against Israel. When the Ammonites fought against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to Jephthah from the land of Tob, and they said to him, "Come and be our leader, so that we may fight against the Ammonites." But Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, "Do you not hate me and drive me from the house of my father? Why have you come to me now when you are in trouble?" The elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, "This is why you have turned to you now, that you may go with us and fight the Ammonites and become head over all the inhabitants of Gilead." So Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, "If you take me back home to fight against the Ammonites, and the Lord gives them over to me, will I really become your head?" The elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, "The Lord is the witness between us, and be assured that we will do as we have said." So Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and leader over them, and Jephthah repeated everything that he had promised before the Lord at Mizpah. Now Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites, saying, "What is the problem between you and me, that you have come against me to fight in my land?" The Ammonites' king replied to the messengers of Jephthah, It is because Israel took away my land when they came up from Egypt, from the river Arnon as far as the Jabbok and the east of the Jordan. So now return those lands peacefully." But Jephthah sent messengers again to the king of the Ammonites, and they said to him, "This is what Jephthah says. Israel did not take the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites, for when they came up from Egypt, Israel walked through the wilderness to the Red Sea and came to Kadesh. Then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, 'Please let them pass through your land.' But the king of Edom would not listen." It says, Jephthah's promises before the Lord are a strange mixture of faith and foolishness. When Jephthah did acknowledge God, his self-interest and foolishness often overlooked his faith. The book of Hebrews has a more positive view of him. Jephthah is one of those listed that says, "Who by faith, that is, with an enduring trust in God and his promises, subdued kingdoms, administered justice, obtained blessings." So it's good that they looked at him differently. And so it says, "Then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, 'Please let them pass through your land.' But the king of Edom would not listen. So also they sent word to the king of Moab, but he would not consent. So Israel stayed at Kadesh. Then they went through the wilderness and went around the land of Edom and the land of Moab, and came to the east side of the land of Moab, and they camped on the other side of the river. But they did not enter the territory of Moab, for their Arnon was the northern boundary of Moab. Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, king of Heshbon, and Israel, and said to him, 'Please let us pass through your land to our place.' But Sihon did not trust Israel to pass through this territory. So Sihon gathered together all his people and camped at Jahaz and fought against Israel. The Lord, the God of Israel, gave Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel, and they defeated them. So Israel took possession of all the land of the Amorites and the inhabitants of the country. And they took possession of all the territory of the Amorites, from the Arnon as far as the Jabbok, and as far from the wilderness as far as Jordan." And it says here, "The Lord, the God of Israel, was not merely an aggressor, but the recipient of the Lord's generosity." The Ammonites had brought their misfortune on themselves by hindering Israel's advance into the promised land. Israel would not have taken Ammonite land, since God had expressly commanded them not to. The Ammonites were not only indirectly affected by Israel's expansion. In addition, the Ammonites never really had true claim to the land to begin with. It was in fact the land of the Amorites. The limit of the Amorite land in verse 22 are precisely what the Ammonites claimed as the heirs in the verse 13. They also rebutes the Ammonites' claim. Israel had occupied the land in dispute for at least 300 years, long enough to make a legitimate claim on it. And it says, "And now the Lord God of Israel has dispossessed and driven out the Amorites from before his people Israel. So why should you possess it? Do you not possess what Shemos, your God, gives you to possess? And everything that the Lord our God dispossessed before us, we will possess." And it says, usually the worship of Shemos is associated with Moab, and elsewhere the Ammonite god was called Moloch. However, Ammon and Moab lived side by side and apparently shared culture and religion, as well as their common descent from Lot. Jephthah's comment was a derisive jab at the ineffectiveness of their God. And it says, "Now, are you any better than Balak, the son of Zippor, the king of Moab? Did he ever strike against Israel, or did you ever go to war against them? While the Israel lived in Heshbon and its villages, and in Aror and its villages, and in all the cities along the banks of the Arnon for 300 years, why did you not remove and recover your lost lands during that time? So I have not sinned against you, but you are doing me wrong by making war against me. May the Lord, the righteous judge this day between the Israelites and the Ammonites. But the king of the Ammonites disregarded the message of Jephthah, which he sent to him. See how it goes, right? Goodness, this God is the ultimate source of all justice. He has the right to judge every man and woman with his divine authority and power. God always judges with compassion and justice, while at the same time he is loving, compassion, and perfect strife. Given the depravity of the human heart, it is only expected that nation will declare war on nation. We also deal with wars and strife in our interpersonal relationships. When we are faced with unjust attacks, we can only do as Jephthah did and trust God to judge rightly between the two sides of the dispute. So Jephthah's tragic vow. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah, and he passed through Gilead and Manasseh and Mizpah and Gilead. And from Mizpah of Gilead he passed on the Ammonites. Jephthah made a vow to the Lord and said, if you will indeed give the Ammonites into my hands, then whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the Ammonites, it shall be the Lord's, and I will offer it up as a burnt offering. Then Jephthah crossed over to the Ammonites to fight with them, and the Lord gave them into his hands. And from Aor to the entrance of Minnith he struck them, 20 cities, as far as Abel-Keram, brook by the vineyard, and with a very great defeat. So the Ammonites were subdued and humbled before the Israelites. Then Jephthah came to his house at Mizpah, and this is what he saw, his daughter coming out to meet him with tambourines and with dancing, and she was his only child, except for her he had no son or daughter. And when he saw her, he tore his clothes in grief and said, alas, my daughter, you have brought me great disaster, and you are the cause of ruin to me, for I have made a vow to the Lord, and I cannot take it back. And she said to him, my father, you have made a vow to the Lord. Do to me as you have vowed, since the Lord has taken vengeance for you on your enemies, the Ammonites. And she said to her father, let this one thing be done to me. Let me alone for 2 months, so that I may go to the mountains and weep over my virginity, and I and my companions. And he said, go. And so he sent her away for 2 months, and she left with her companions, and he wept over her virginity in the mountains. At the end of the 2 months, she returned to her father, who did to her as he had vowed. And she had no relations with a man. It became a custom in Israel that the daughters of Israel went yearly to tell the story of the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite 4 days in the year. So it says, some have interpreted Jephthah's vow as a clear intention to offer human sacrifice. The phrase to meet me, coupled with coming out of the house, seems to refer more appropriately to a human than an animal. Undoubtedly, Jephthah knew that human sacrifice was strictly forbidden in Israel. But his foolishness and lack of faith impelled him to make a reckless vow in order to try to manipulate God. And it says, did Jephthah have to follow through on his vow? Ordinarily, the answer would be yes. Vows were made only to God, and they were solemn pledges that had to be kept. But if Jephthah intended his vow to include human sacrifice, he was vowing to sin, an action which could hardly please the Lord. And then it says, the text did not explicitly say that he killed his daughter, and some believe that he sacrificed her by dedicating her to a life of virginity. Human sacrifice was contrary to the law of Moses. Until the wicked reigns of Ahaz and Manasseh centuries later, there is no record of human sacrifice in Israel, even by those who followed Baal. The great respect that Jephthah had for God would surely have prevented him from making such a perverse offering. The several references to her virginity seem to support the lifelong celibacy, and the Bible provides evidence that such devoted services for women did exist in the central sanctuary. Jephthah's vow in verse 31 could be translated, shall be the Lord's, or I will offer it up as a burnt offering. Thus his vow could be interpreted that if a person came out first, he would dedicate the person to the Lord, or if an animal came out first, he would offer the animal. As if frequently in the case of the book of Judges, we are given the bare facts of a puzzling story and no comment about what God thought about it. Love the little insight in there. That was the first thing I thought. Did he kill his daughter? But I love the little insight that we can read about this to understand a little bit more. So, all right, learning more and more. This is your Daily Bible Chapter, reading God's Word Monday through Friday. See you tomorrow.